All right, we got Cake joining here to talk about the huge trade from today involving LaMelo Ball and the Timberwolves. We've got a Giannis trade to talk about, and we've got the draft to react to. But first, how are you doing? Thanks for joining.
What's up, brother? Enjoying the USA Soccer FIFA World Cup. Loving it. I'm a more than fair weather fan of soccer, but I especially love the World Cup. So it's good. And then we get a little bit of sprinkling of all the basketball news on top.
Let's jump right into it. I know you have some strong LaMelo Ball thoughts, and we were exchanging texts when it went down this morning. You wake up earlier than me, so I woke up to text from you about it. I want to give my reaction first because as the day went on and as I researched, I softened on it a bit. I still don't like it because my reasons for not liking it are bigger than the reasons for liking it. I have a lot of small reasons for why I like it and understand it, and then a couple of big reasons why I don't. You didn't like it. In fact, I think you said it was the worst trade since Luca.
I do think it's a really bad trade, but for fairly nuanced reasons. I don't necessarily think it makes the Timberwolves like extremely worse. I I think it's more about the fact that all the assets that they gave up and the fact that they went really pot committed here, it's just not the direction that I would have went with the franchise. And that's kind of my main issue with the trade itself, as opposed to what the team's going to look like on the court. So yes, in a way, I might have been engaging in a little bit of hyperbole in the immediate sense, but I do think they gave up way too much for, and if his injury issues continue, it's going to be really bad for them, and they really will not have a path to get better.
That's the major reason why I ultimately dislike it. You can't empty every asset in pretty much any move, but especially in a move that has uncertainty around it. The assets are there to deal with the uncertainty and to make adjustments that will almost assuredly be needed. And they just have no ammunition to do that anymore without making changes to their rotation. Terrence Shannon Jr. would have to be the sweetener, and who knows how many teams are actually interested in that. So you basically limit your pool of suitors to make any kind of adjusting move throughout the season. And I thought they had a good thing going, and I was very much looking forward to Naz Reid starting at the 4 and in lineups with him at the 5 with a stretch big with 4 wing players. And so I didn't think that they really needed to do this, but I did. I had my episode recently about them saying that they do need to reinvent themselves and become a more perimeter oriented team. They did need to find a way to acquire a number 2. And that's what they did. I just thought they took too big of a swing. It's a textbook like, we need a shooting creator at point guard. Let's go get the most expensive version of that because we're all in and we're going for it, rather than finding some sort of way to fill that need without spending everything you have.
So a couple things. I can't think of another trade that I disliked as much as I did since the Luca trade. So I do stand by my comments earlier. Now that being said, we haven't had that many big swings of trades since Luca, so I guess take that with a grain of salt. This had to have been about appeasing Ant. And there must be something internally that was causing stress, or that Ant had made very public or known to management, that he did not want to run it back with the same direction because of the way that the playoffs went down, and the fact that the Spurs and the Thunder were just double teaming him every time he got across half court. And here we are, right? And I'm sure he did want more freedom. You know, they were very much trying to make him a point guard or function similar to a point guard during the regular season, right? And I assume that he doesn't see himself in that role and wanted a more natural point guard. I'm hearing that the Timberwolves have been asking about and looking at LaMelo for several years now. So I do think that this trade has more history than I knew about. And I think it's a lot more about appeasing Ant as opposed to, and kind of zigging while everybody's zagging. I just, I go back to the playoffs and I'm like, This is the same team that had a massive injury to Dante DiVincenzo. And Edwards had a nasty knee injury in the playoffs and was largely physically limited during that series with the Spurs and still took the Spurs to 7 games.
6
I
games. But
6
I
games.
agree with you, it was super competitive.
Yeah, I don't understand why they kind of jumped ship. I have no problem with reimagining the team and wanting to get some different sort of players and using the assets they had to become a to use your language to be a little bit more perimeter focused and get Ant that point guard help that he wanted. I just don't know why they had to empty their coffers, trade away both of their starting power forwards, and essentially immediately go back into the apron and have over $500 million worth of contracts committed to Ant Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and Io DeSunmu for the near future to accomplish that. I think they could have reimagined the team to satisfy some of Ant Edwards' concerns without taking this exact type of swing is more of my opinion on the trade itself. In terms of the on-court fit, bottom line to keep it simple, I think that offensively they're going to be very good. Defensively is the much bigger question. And I just wonder how this team is going to compete physically with the Spurs and the Thunder, who are just two of the most physical teams in the entire league. You might be able to have a lot of great perimeter players, but if they can't handle the increased physicality in the playoffs, and that comes not just by way of the refs, but the refs allowing the players to just physically be more aggressive, that they're going to get very far or further than where they had been.
It's funny you bring up the Spurs because they actually aren't a big team. They consistently put 4 wings on the court or between wings and guards with Wemby. So yeah, Wemby's a big guy to deal with, but they're not this oversized team like Houston and Denver and OKC is with OKC running Chet and Hartenstein together. This team was originally imagined to compete best with Denver. And I almost took this adjustment as a way to recalibrate and focus on the Spurs and to a lesser degree the Thunder, but more so the Spurs.
Yeah, but see, I also think that's misguided because look at what the Spurs did in the draft. They immediately with their 2 draft picks, they took 2 big guys. They took Terrace Reed, I believe in the second or at the end of the first round, and then they went out and they got Jaden Quintance. Those are 2 big guys. So they immediately went out and addressed whatever size you're saying they're lacking. And at the end of the day, you have the tallest man in the entire league whose wingspan stretches 3/4 of the width of the court by itself. So I
Sure,
do think
but
they are, and also their guards are, when we talk about big, oftentimes people just think about height, but there's also just strength and length. And their guards might not be like 6'7", 6'8", but they are very strong, physically big guys that are very long.
but I would argue that this Minnesota team now matches up pretty well with the Spurs team we saw last year. What they're going to get out of these rookies, we'll see, but it's not like interior play is going to become a strength of theirs. They're still a perimeter oriented team wanting to create as much room within the perimeter for Wemby as they can. When it comes to the whole size argument, it all comes down to who can actually punish you. And I do think that this team, it's very realistic that they struggle in a series because of that. I think that provided they have health, it's likely that they'll have a great regular season. I'm not sure that this trade today makes them a more competitive playoff team. You need this offensive threat creating ball handler at the point. Did you have to go get the most expensive one on the market? Could you have gotten a Kobe White or tried to pry Tyler Hero away from the Bucks who just traded for him or
Well,
somebody who's a step down?
let me just interject there because you said something that I think is factually incorrect, which was the most expensive player on the market. This goes back to something I made earlier. He wasn't on the market. They went out and went for a
Well,
guy
on the
that
market,
wasn't
I
on the.
mean, that was available for them to actually trade for.
Well, I'm just saying this is classic Desmond Bain situation. Desmond Bain wasn't on the trade market, and the Magic paid a premium to get him.
Well, clearly
LaMelo,
LaMelo Ball became available. There were
well,
other teams trying to trade for him as well.
so I hate when teams go and try to trade for a guy that's not actively being traded, out there as a trade, because that is the exact scenarios where you end up overpaying.
Yeah.
And that's why I
No,
think
that's
this
true.
costs way too much. So the Charlotte Hornets would have been completely fine running it back, and unless they were blown away with the trade offer that they couldn't refuse. And that's what happened.
It's funny you say that because there's a whole camp of people that are underrating the return that they got, saying that basically they got fleeced. They got LaMelo for a bench player and a 2033 pick. But to me, first of all, I think that LaMelo's been a bit of a headache for them. I think that they question how reliable he is and will be going forward. He's had tons of health issues. He's had a lot of maturity issues, not only in the locker room, but just stuff around Charlotte. I saw a lot of people say that he basically wreaks havoc on the road the way that he's out there driving, and everyone hates it. So who knows how much of that is a true character issue or a true immaturity issue or just stories that you hear. But I think that they were basically thrilled to turn the page from him, and they did it. It's not it's not a coincidence that they did it just after he had a fully healthy season
Oh,
and
no, they're definitely
looked good.
sold high. And I wouldn't say, I don't think that you can say they're thrilled to move on from him. I think what they're thrilled with is the return that they got,
So that's
and
what
the
I
fact,
mean. That's
yeah,
what I
I,
mean. Yeah,
I don't
they
think
would
that
have
they
been
were,
fine running it back. I'm in agreement with that. But to
yeah. And
get a guy like Nas Reed who fits what they're building really well, and to get distant picks and all these extra swaps and all that stuff, I know people think it's worthless, but it's all just ammunition to make deals, and it's all good stuff to get.
Well, it's
And
it's great for them because it adds an incredible amount of flexibility. Just from my comments on the Hornets, I I'd also be thrilled with the return. I think that they got an incredible return for him, setting aside the massive trade exception that's going to allow them to go shopping. But I also like the Nas Reed fit. I do like them dumping LaMelo's salary, which gives them a lot of salary flexibility. And then all of the draft picks, the swaps, a lot of people are saying are going to become even more valuable with these new draft rules. I just think that they're just thrilled to be able to have so much flexibility in terms of how they want to shape this team moving forward. On the court next year, they are going to be worse. I don't think that there's any question about that unless they, you know, take another big swing this year, which I don't think they're going to do. I think going from LaMelo to Kobe White is a significant downgrade. And I think Con Knipple and Brandon Miller were benefiting off of all of the things that LaMelo does great in terms of setting up spot up shooters. So I do expect regression back to the mean for those two players who I think were benefiting, and the advanced analytics support that based on the plus minuses of what the rosters were doing when LaMelo was on and off the court. So bottom line, for the Hornets, thrilled with the return, but on court, they're going to be worse next year.
of course, that's one of my favorite parts of the trade for them. I think they looked at the East. The best case scenario for us is to be in the play in again, but it's more than likely that we're not going to be. We're going to see Miami be better. Indiana, who was out of the picture, is going to be better. Washington is going to be in the mix now, we expect. Usually there's a surprise team too, but all of the teams ahead of them coming back with LaMelo, I find it hard to believe that they would be able to leapfrog any of them. I think that they saw that their odds of even making the play in were long, and you've got a couple of years left here on LaMelo's contract, and it was an opportunity to sell high. And as far as the trade exception, I saw some people talking about Jaylen Brown and things like that. It is not going to be used to acquire a superstar. The salary has to fit entirely into the trade exception. So I think it's likely that we see it be somebody like Brandon Ingram if Toronto wants to get off that contract.
Well,
Somebody like that.
I do think I'm not going to foreclose the possibility of them trading, because you never know who becomes available. So, but I one thing I do agree with, it's a 100% not going to be used to sign a big time player this year or anytime soon.
Well, it expires in 1 year.
Okay. So I don't think it's going to be this offseason. If anything, it'd be next offseason.
I think it, I think it could be a guy like DeJounte Murray, or it's like look for a contract that some team has that the Hornets will take on. I think it's going to be something like that. But to go back to the Wolves and the concerns with LaMelo Ball, I want to touch on why I liked it for them. You mentioned his salary. His salary is actually, I think, what made him attractive to them. That's the number you want your number two making. And it's the reason they traded Carl Towns. Carl Towns was making almost $60 million. That's not a salary they're prepared to keep on the books alongside Anthony Edwards. They thought it was going to be very hard to field a full roster with Anthony Edwards money plus Carl Anthony Towns, and they made that decision a couple seasons ago, obviously. So LaMelo being under contract for 40 million this upcoming season, then 43 and a half, then 46 is right. That's the money they want to see on their books. And also the age, him being 25 is perfect as well.
Same draft class as Anthony Edwards.
What I'm happy with Minnesota, if they were going to take a pretty big swing, I would have hated to see them go for Kyrie or like Kawhi Leonard, somebody like that. Giving up assets to acquire somebody in their mid 30s is a terrible idea when your best player is 25. If you're going to do this and give up future flexibility, the ideal outcome that you're shooting for, the upside that you're hoping for, needs to be that you have somebody that you can pair with Edwards for multiple years. And now they have Edwards, Ball, McDaniels, and Desunmu all in their mid 20s, locked up for at least the next 3 seasons, and they can figure it out around there. Now, when it comes to their big men, I think that they're going to have to bargain hunt. I don't think that McDaniels is going to start at the 4 and Desunmu is going to start. I think they're going to find some sort of solution to play a more traditional lineup in the starting group and then finish with that smaller lineup.
It's not going to be cheap if they're playoff caliber or they have to get lucky. I like it for the Wolves for the simple reason, as I said earlier, they're zigging when everybody's zagging. Their approach now is going to be much, much different than what everybody else is bringing to the table when they're going to be playing the Thunder and the Spurs. And you might not want to use the Thunder and the Spurs as a measuring stick and saying teams shouldn't convey their roster just to try to beat these teams. But in reality, I think you actually have to. And so they're going to be very different. They're going to be throwing different looks at those two teams, and we'll see if it works. So they're taking a unique swing and a unique way to tackle this problem. So we'll see if it works.
I do think that they needed to find a way to acquire a number two, and that was the limitation on this team over the last couple of seasons. They were hoping that McDaniels ideally was going to step into that role. Gobert isn't offensively strong enough to be your number two. And so this team just had a lot of good players behind Anthony Edwards, a lot of strong players, but no number two. And ultimately that was seen as a roadblock to them getting to the finals.
I mean, how
And
long is Gobert going to be on this roster?
I think maybe 2 more years at the most. He's got the last guaranteed year of his deal and then a player option. I think they may negotiate some sort of multi-year thing with that player option to bring that cap number down, and then they'll probably look to move him after that season. That would be my
Because he
guess.
becomes inexpendable. I mean,
Right.
they
And
cannot
so
lose
I
him. He
wanted
needs
to
to be healthy.
throw one idea I had for how to bolster their front court depth, because this is putting a lot of eggs in the Behringer basket, a guy that Chris Finch did not feel strongly enough about to play at all last season, like in the playoffs and when it mattered, would not lean on him. And he's 20 years old, and now he is your only backup for Gobert. And you're presumably going to need somebody behind him if Gobert ever has any health issues. They like the Australian guy, Rocco Zikarsky, but they do not have a power forward on this team. There's guys who can play the 4. I actually think, and there's already ideas being thrown around online, that Josh Green is not going to stay on this roster.
No.
They're going to find another place to route him.
Hmm.
One guy that I think makes a lot of sense as just a modest practical option is to solve this in this big trade with Brooklyn and Chicago that they already have going, and to just get Jalen Smith back from the Bulls. He's a big guy that can play the 4 and the 5 and can hit the 3 at a reasonable clip. He gives them some standing as a backup center, a veteran backup center. supposing the coaching staff doesn't like what they see in Behringer's development, what are they going to do? And so you may say, "Oh, but he's a productive player, had a good year, shot from three about as well as Naz Reid did." Now, the type of shots he's taking are different. He's being left alone and he's hitting them versus Reid taking difficult, sometimes contested shots and at a higher volume.
I
But the
mean,
point is,
Reed
he's
could
not
dribble
somebody.
and take players off the dribble. That is not Jalen Smith.
No, he's somebody that you can't just leave open in the corner, though, because he can make it at a good enough number that you have to respect it. And I think that's really all this team needs. In addition to somebody who can start, I don't like him as a starter. One guy I like them getting as a starter is Torian Prince. I think he's a guy who could fit in really well, who they could actually get for the veteran minimum. If you went
I
to
kind
him,
of like John Collins for them if they can get him for
the
the
veteran
mid
minimum,
level or the veteran minimum.
they can't go with the mid level. They have very little money left to spend.
Or the veteran minimum if John Collins just wants to go be on a potential playoff team. I like him. He's probably the best. He can shoot it. He brings a lot to the. He's like a poor man's Nas Reed in a sense, and we've seen him play well in the playoffs with a ball dominant guard in Trey Young, but that was many years ago with the Hawks. But I do like him.
I mean, that would be nice. I think it's unrealistic he takes the minimum. He has a better market value than that. So, in terms of the bargain bin, I think coming away with Torian Prince, who is a proven playoff contributor and played for Minnesota under Chris Finch a couple of seasons ago before he went to Milwaukee. I think he'd be kind of a nice fit there for their starting group. He has experience as a starter. And then getting Jalen Smith to be the sort of bigger guy who can play the five and who could rebound. This team's going to have a hard time rebounding.
Oh yeah.
They need to find a power forward who can also play center and who can rebound. And I don't, looking at the bargain bin, I'm not sure where they're going to find that. So I saw some people online suggested PJ Washington. Does Dallas want to give you PJ Washington for Josh Green and Terrence Shannon Jr.? Maybe Isaiah Evans? I don't know. I would guess not, but that's maybe the best case scenario. But if you're talking about just players that are actually attainable, I think those two guys I mentioned make a lot of sense for them.
So to wrap this up, what would you give? What would give? I know you're not a grade guy, but give me some grades for both of the two teams.
I would give the Wolves a B minus. I ultimately wouldn't have done it, but I do understand why they felt like they needed to do something. I mean, I had an episode about them needing to do something like this. I just thought giving up less to take the same risk on John Morant was a better idea than what they chose to do.
Yeah, I was John Morant was the name I thought. I thought they could have given if they wanted to do this, they could have got somebody like John Morant for a cheaper price because he's such a
They
depreciated
could have
asset.
got him just for Randall and, maybe I know they didn't want to trade DiVincenzo, but they could have figured it out beyond Randall. And yeah, I advocated for that rather than what they chose to do. I think that they took too big of a swing for a guy who's ultimately a risky asset, and I think the package that was offered for him reflects that some people are down on him, some are up on him, and the whole reception of this trade is people either thinking the Hornets got fleeced or the Hornets, sold at the best time. But yeah, so I said B minus for Minnesota. I would say a B plus for Charlotte.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would give an A for Charlotte. I do with all of LaMelo Ball's injury history. I mean, this is the most games I think he's ever played in his career. I think it was the perfect time to trade him. And like I mentioned earlier, it was an incredible haul for them. On paper, they're not going to be better. They're going to be a worse team next year, but really, who cares? They weren't competing for a championship next year with the Knicks and the other good teams in the league. They just weren't. So I do like that. I too would give it a B minus for the T Wolves for all of the reasons I said earlier.
All right. Yeah, one thing about his injuries, I don't know how much of that was Charlotte wanting to sit him as long as possible for their draft stock. I'd have to go back and look, but I that came across my mind today. It's like, is that really the number of games he would have missed under normal circumstances?
Just to intercept here on that, they mentioned, which I didn't know, that the Hornets actually had him on a minute restriction. They were not playing him more than a certain number of minutes, which was surprising. I think it was no more than 30 minutes a game for him, which was you're not gonna be able to do that if you're the Wolves.
We'll see how they're able to cobble the rest of this roster together. I would not expect a big move for a starting power forward. I think they're going to find a way to scrape the bargain bin for what's going to be an attractive role for some veteran, being able to start on a team that's going to make a deep playoff run. But
Can
that's
we
going to
both
be a
agree
veteran
that this
minimum.
could go absolutely horribly for the team? Like, this could go really bad for the
Well,
T-Wolves.
that's what this trade ultimately told me was, it violates thou shall not be desperate, thou shall not be pressured by the media. Like there's all this noise around Anthony Edwards that coincidentally happened right after the Giannis trade finished up. All of this talk about Carl Anthony Towns winning the title being some factor in Anthony Edwards having discontent. The reports coming from Anthony Edwards were that he was happy. I wonder how pressured they felt about this, but this is their big swing. I hate logic like that. Allow yourself to make a risky deal because it's your only choice. That kind of logic. Well, what were we going to do? Run it back?
But
So
that's
we'll
why
see
I
how
was
it
saying
works out.
earlier, like, running it back, they were
Yeah,
injured in that
they had a
season.
good
Like,
thing
they
going.
they they could have ran it back and been contenders. So I'm surprised that they gave up so early.
Liked the Morant middle ground, but I don't
Let's
think
move
he's
on to
much different.
Giannis.
Yeah, as for Giannis, I the biggest thing I felt was relief that it's finally over. I'm so tired of the Giannis story. I think that Miami is largely just going to be a a playoff team, but they're not contenders in the East until next season. They just don't have enough tools and assets at their disposal to build out this roster. Adding Giannis to Bam is going to be clunky at first. I think that that's a good fit long term, but that's not an easy fit to figure out. So they're going to need at least a year, I would say. I wouldn't expect anything from the Heat this upcoming season. I was happy that this is over for Milwaukee. I felt like they got a great deal from the Heat. I would want the Heat's picks. Like I said, I don't think Miami's going to be a top three team in the East any of these next few years. But we'll see what they're able to do after this offseason. But they don't have picks to acquire players. They're going to kind of be cobbling this together. And I think this upcoming season, they're especially going to be relatively average and they'll be better the year after that. We'll see what their ceiling ends up being. But I would bet against them making a finals in the next few seasons of Giannis's extension that he's going to sign.
Well, Giannis has played like I don't think he's missed games in the playoffs in every single year that they've actually made it since
Right.
2021. So, I to start with the Heat, I think this is Riley dipping back into his old trusty bag of tricks, and this is how he builds out his teams. He doesn't do it through the draft, he does it through trades and big free agent signings, and I just don't think that's how you build championship contenders. Now, some people might say, "Well, what about the Knicks? The Knicks just did that. Their 4 stars were all guys that they traded for and got through free agency." I hate that analogy because I don't think it's fair to point to the Knicks because they had such a unique set of circumstances that is almost impossible to replicate. They didn't go out big name hunting. They signed Jalen Brunson on what a lot of people at the time thought was a crazy free agency deal and got him for 100 plus million, what
Yeah.
it was. And then when it came around to extensions, he took a massive haircut to allow them to make the trades that they did to bring in Bridges and Ananobi through trades. That was an unusual set of circumstances and an unusual posture for a superstar player or a player of Brunson's caliber to take. So I don't think you can point to the Knicks and say this is how you build teams. I think this you point more towards teams like the Nets, like the Suns.
Yeah. This
It
is a
just
very
didn't
old school way
work.
of doing it.
And I don't think it works in the modern day NBA precisely because of all of the aprons and the world of the salary cap and the way that the NBA has set it up so that you can't do this anymore. In terms of the overall trade itself, I think it's hard to grade because what were the Heat gonna do? They had no identity. They had to do something, and, so I don't blame them for taking this swing, but I think it's very much a TBD in terms of their grade until we see what their roster looks like at the end of the day, and I am very, very frightened about one, Giannis's age, and two, his injury history, and especially not just his injury history itself, because players get injured all the time, but the types of injuries he's had, specifically those calf injuries that he was dealing with. Those
Yeah,
oftentimes linger and can potentially lead to much more serious and worse injuries, specifically the Achilles. So those are big time concerns I have. But again, they didn't have an identity and they had to do something. So I don't blame them. In terms of Milwaukee, shame on them for not having more self awareness
to do
a year ago because they could have gotten more. But in terms of 2026, what their market was right now, I think they did as about as well as they could have. And I agree with you. If they narrowed it down to either the Celtics or the Heat, I agree with you 100%. You'd rather have the Heat picks, or I
yeah,
would rather have the Heat picks
and
for
where,
all of
like, young
for
player.
all of the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And I do think they can flip some of those other assets that they got back for more picks so that in the aggregate, you get back a much larger degree of picks. And they're also very interesting because, a lot of people will point to the new rules on the changes regarding the draft and teams getting penalized. Well, they don't have any of their picks. So they doesn't matter if they suck or are bad. They just if anything, if they suck, the team that's going to suffer the most is the Portland Trailblazers. So they are uniquely positioned in that way.
Yeah,
So, and Khalil Ware is an interesting guy. He could end up being a big time piece if his potential comes to fruition. I do like Hawkes as a rotational, playable guy who playoff teams might come looking for you to grab a guy like that and be willing to pay big time for. And
yeah.
I don't think heroes for long
No,
in
I think he'll be moved.
Milwaukee. Yeah, so I think Milwaukee, shame on them for not seeing this earlier, but for purposes of what they could have done now, I'd give them like a B minus.
Yeah, it was like when all the dust settled, they were just looking at each other as the only logical pairings. Giannis suitors kind of got scared away. There actually weren't that many. He's expensive, and then he's also a risky asset at this point in his career with all the miles, like you said, and he hasn't been all defense in multiple seasons. There's all these indicators that he's actually declining as an asset. He's still a phenomenal
He's a
player,
horrible
obviously.
free throw shooter. People always forget that. That is a big downgrade part of his game, and he can't shoot. They're
Right.
very much a one-dimensional team, and then the fit against I'm sure they will figure out the fit alongside Bam, but to your point, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I'm sure another reason why you hate it is like he's due for an extension. They're going to end up extending him at a huge number, which you
Yeah.
hate.
No, it's gonna be a massive number. And then, the main problem with this team, it's not even just shooting, people are saying there's no shooting. They don't have anybody with the ball in their hands that can do anything or create for anybody. People are saying like, "Oh, they're gonna be such a good defensive team." With Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, Giannis, and Bam, who's creating for anybody? They
Nobody.
they don't have any creation. They're gonna really, really struggle offensively. They're gonna be having to just run strict sets where the coach is basically creating for everyone on the court, and I don't think that that's gonna be strong enough to win a first round. I think, again, like I said, I think they'll make the playoffs. I could see them being in the play-in, though, and squeezing into the playoffs, but I don't see them winning a first round matchup. They're not gonna be better than, I don't think, Atlanta or the other teams in the middle there, like where I expect Indiana to be. Detroit and Boston are going to be at the top with the Knicks again. Maybe they have a shot at being better than Toronto, but probably not. I mean, even just making the top six is going to be a challenge this upcoming season with the roster that they're left with and the relatively small amount of money they have to spend being hard capped at the first apron. And so I think given that hard cap, they are expecting this year to be Basically, let's all get used to each other. Let's develop a working relationship here. Let's see how Giannis and Bam are. Let's figure out what we're going to do after this. And the sneaky thing with this team is they actually have a ton of cap space next offseason because all the guys they traded were all the guys they have under contract. Jovic is the only contract on the books for multiple seasons after this besides, Giannis and Bam. There's a Bobby Portis player option, but that's it. They potentially have a lot of space to do stuff, but free agency is challenging these days. I think they're going to have a really hard time building out a team that can get out of the second round. Maybe in a year or two, this team's strong enough to win a first round series. I don't see how they beat one of these other teams in the East. So, I mean, good for them, I guess, that, they're not in the play in picture perennially anymore like they were. But I don't think this is anything to be that excited about. And I thought it was telling that Kawhi didn't want to go there. I don't know if you saw that, but
Yes, I did.
I think he's like, that team's not going to be good.
Well, he's a weird fit alongside of them as well.
He's too rigid, yeah. But I don't think that they're going to be this attractive destination. I think they're going to have kind of a hard time.
Now, what about the team that missed out on Giannis? What do you think the fallout is in Boston?
Yeah. So we talked about this the other day, and I took a more hardline stance on, well, what are you getting offended about being offered for Giannis? But ultimately, the more I thought about it, I think I was wrong and you were right. But I think it's because it's clear that they're entertaining other offers for him as well, and it's almost like a sell high situation when it comes to him coming off this year he just had, and that is insulting if you're Jalen Brown. I think if they had went to him and said, we want to take this shot at Giannis and we're offering just you and picks because you're that valuable of a player, they could have minimized some of that damage around that conversation. But it's clear now that, and I don't think it's just because he's mad about Giannis. I think they were entertaining other offers for him as well. So yeah, I don't think there's a lot of suitors for Jalen Brown actually, based on what Boston is going to want in return. I think at a certain point they're just going to take a hardline stance and try to bring it back if they're not getting any offers they like. Don't you think? It's not like they have to trade him.
Yeah, I kind of am a little bit more extreme on this. I think this could be like a blood in the water with sharks coming around, circling around the boat for the Celtics because unless they hire the best psychiatrist or sports psychiatrist in the history of the sport, I don't see how they can run this back. I think it's the fallout of this is going to be really bad. I don't mean to be hyperbolic about it, but I just think that they have to do the trade. And then when you're in a position where you have to make the trade, I think you end up in a situation where they may not get as much as you would hope for back. Now, they might be happy with the trade return, but I think Boston's a very passionate fan base, and I can imagine a Boston team being, Boston fans being upset with the return or thinking they should have got more. I don't know how many teams are looking for, but the trade ideas that I heard, like for Zach talking about, for example, was like the Portland Trailblazers and getting back like Jeremy Grant and like some other cap filler and a bunch of picks. I mean, I Boston might be lit on fire if that's the trade that they settle for. But
I think Portland's actually the most logical destination.
I know, but they're not giving Avdia. That's not going to happen. You're not getting Avdia
No,
back for him. So
no, and
it's like,
that was it. This actually kind of goes off what we were saying about the LaMelo acquisition. Is if you're looking for a number two, they're very hard to acquire. So if you're trading Jalen Brown, you're almost assuredly not going to get somebody capable of being a number two. You're basically asking Derek White to step into that role more than likely.
well, by all accounts, if you're trading for him, you're trading for him to be the number one because the reason why he's leaving Boston is because he doesn't want to be a number two anymore.
Right. No, exactly. But I don't think that they're able to trade him for somebody who can be a number two. And so ultimately, whatever they get back, the team is going to have a ceiling for that reason.
Yeah.
So that's why I think Portland is the most logical place because they are in a position to offer those Milwaukee picks. There's Drew Holiday there. If you wanted to welcome him back, he's a big contract you could get instead of Jeremy Grant. There's Robert Williams, who you could do a sign and trade. That could be part of the deal. There's enough juice to be squeezed there as a location with assets that I think Boston would be interested in. Whereas a team like New Orleans that I've heard called out, like, why does New Orleans want to give you Trey Murphy and Herb Jones for Jaylen Brown? Like, what does that do for them? What do they want 29-year-old Jaylen Brown for, to try to get out of being 14th place in the West again?
Right.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense for them. Whereas Portland could talk themselves into it with Dame on the team and Denny Advia with Klingon. You get Jaylen Brown in there and maybe Shaden Sharp if Shaden Sharp's not involved in the deal. That's a very
Maybe
good starting
Scoot,
five.
maybe Scoot. You sell it. It's a package around Scoot, the future of Scoot, something like that.
Yeah, so I was looking at their books, and I actually wouldn't want. I would say, you know what, you have cap space for Portland. I don't want one of these big contracts. We don't need to match. Like, keep Grant and Holiday. I don't want either of those big contracts. If you say that we can't have Shaden Sharp, then fine, I'm going to take more picks. But like, you could take Kamara. Tumani Kamara has a good contract for the next 4 years. You can grab Scoot. You can get Young Henson, make them throw him in. And then, like I said, you can get the sign and trade with Robert Williams, and that allows you as Boston access to the mid level. You didn't have to use it on Robert Williams. He's involved in the
Yeah.
trade instead.
That just doesn't make Boston much better, and that's a fan base that expects to be competing for titles. And also something to mention is Portland's owner, who's a wild card in this because he is a major penny pincher, and that those numbers on Jaylen Brown's contracts is a massive one. And I imagine you're going to be hard pressed to get that owner to go for it. I mean, I read an article today about what he was doing with Portland City Council, who's trying to keep the team in Portland and wants to renovate the stadium. But by all accounts, Dundon pretty much said, I'm not contributing any money towards it. It all has to come from public funds. If anything, I am contributing because I'm keeping the team here paying massive taxes that I wouldn't have to pay if I moved the team elsewhere, was essentially what he implied. So you to get Jaylen Brown, I also think you have to have an owner that's willing to spend, and I don't know if he is.
Yeah, they wouldn't they wouldn't be at risk of the second apron. They're a relatively cheap team. They've got Holiday and Grant coming off their books soon. They also have a extension for Denny Avia that they need to come up with. So they would be a tax team though, and who knows if this is going to be the type of owner, like you said, that has a firm line when it comes to luxury tax. We're not paying the tax. Similar to Indiana. Like, Indiana can do it. That's how we're going to do it. We're not paying the tax.
Yeah. But I do think the fallout is severe for the Celtics.
It is a major blunder. Yeah,
I,
that
I
this
mean,
is
Brown was already engaging in very odd behavior after they got eliminated, and there was already rumblings about him being kind of upset with management. And I get it. Some people say you should be honored that your name is being thrown in trades for guys like Giannis and whatnot. But Jaylen Brown's a all NBA guy. I think that these guys are that way because they're ultra competitive and they believe in themselves and they think highly of themselves, and they're so great because of their mentality. So I do think he is offended that his name's been thrown in repeatedly for the likes of Kevin Durant and Giannis, and uh, and I don't know how they overcome that. But
how
let's
about
finish with
let me throw another
Spen-
one at you. How about Wagner and Wendell Carter?
I mean, sure.
But see, that
I don't.
this is what I mean, though. It's if the challenge for Boston is to get players that actually contribute to a championship contender immediately, that's going to be very, very hard to find.
Well, why am I doing that if I'm the Magic? I mean, like you're bringing on a massive salary. I mean, he gets paid $60 million a year. I mean,
Yeah,
why are you bringing him on when you have Franz at a way more palatable number, especially after you just emptied your coffers to overpay and bring in Bain? And so just something to think about. But let's end on the draft. We got 10 minutes here. What's your thoughts on the draft?
I was kind of disappointed in the draft, to be honest with you. It just in terms of the fireworks, I was hoping for like more trades and more action. It's really interesting the effect that NIL has had on the draft. I think it's made that it's actually improved the quality of the talent entering the draft. I would say for the most part, like there will be down years and up years all the time, but because players that are maybe you could argue not NBA ready, they're more incentivized to take the money, staying in school. There's not this money versus zero equation that used to make people go into the draft early. So
Yeah,
I think
you look at like Isaiah Evans, for example, like him dropping out of the first round cost him several $1,000,000. And if he had just gone back to Duke, he probably would have made way more money from the
exactly
NIL had he just actually stayed in. And you could see that's why he was so upset. And the way the mechanism is of the draft, it's so once your name is in there, you can't pull it back, no matter where you fall out of the first round. And so I do feel bad for a lot of the guys that lost out on millions by taking that swing. And by all accounts, he should have been drafted in the first round. I was surprised he wasn't. I am a Duke fan, so I am biased, and he would have been great. And our team would have been way better if he had come back. But yeah, to your comments around the NIL, it is a interesting twist because I think college players, need to be more thoughtful about when they enter. I mean, this was by all accounts, considered a very, very talented draft. And next year, the draft is much, much worse, according to most draft analysts that I've listened to. And,
right.
Isaiah Evans stays till he's a junior, and now maybe he's a lottery pick next year. So
Well, that's what I
it's
mean is
amazing.
we had this whole thing around the age requirement for entering the draft as, the concern was that you're getting players that aren't NBA ready and the quality of the talent, isn't ready to contribute right away. And it's interesting how it's come full circle now where that's now being addressed in a different mechanism.
I really like the draft for some of the things it told us about some of the competitive teams. I think you can really take that. One thing I took away was you look at the way the Spurs went around that draft, and it communicated to me like they're not making any trades this offseason. Like it would they're not going to go out and trade De'Aaron Fox to go bring in somebody a front court player to to play alongside Victor. They It's very clear to me they want to continue to build this young roster. They think they took a meaningful step and they addressed their issues through the draft with rookie contracts that are going to look great on their books. They know they have three guys. They have three blue chippers and Victor, Castle, and Harper, and that bill is going to come due and owing soon, and they're going to have to, pay big time money. So they're not going to go out there and I think they will eventually dump De'Aaron Fox to accommodate those extensions. But I think the draft told us that, the Spurs are going to be running it back. If they might make some moves on the peripherals, but they're running it back. Same thing with the Thunder, right? And for the record, I think these are the right calls for both these teams. They got Sturts, they got
Mara.
Mara, and that's how they're going to do this. And I think that it's the right call for those teams. So I do think it was telling what it told us about some of the really good teams. The Knicks, for example, the Knicks are going to run it back too, right? They just kept trading down and down and down, just bringing back as many picks as possible and keeping their books as clean as possible. Because if you draft that first rounder, you have to give them money.
Right.
They're going to be a salary cap slot. So
Yeah.
I think we know that the Knicks are going to run it back too. So it was interesting in that regard.
Yeah, the Knicks are, James Dolan said they're going to avoid the second apron. If they went into it for one season to run it back, that I think it would be realistic. I understand what he's saying in general. I don't think that necessarily means we're not re-signing Mitchell Robinson because under no circumstances will we enter the second apron once. So, but I think that's why they got out of the first round, like you said. They wanted to keep their books down. And I think that that was a major thing we saw too was the impact that the second apron has had on the value of the draft that we didn't see a lot of picks traded for players like I was saying I was expecting. we didn't see players already in the league being traded for picks other than the Giannis trade, and
Yeah, it's because the rookies' contracts are more valuable than ever. It's
the way
and
that the way that you get more value for your dollar is for the most part with young players on cost controlled contracts. And then once their value is demonstrated, now they're being paid what value they're giving you, or worse, even paid more than the value they're giving you. But as a rookie, it's all upside generally.
yeah. In terms of the picks themselves, I did think it was fascinating, and maybe it's just the intel was that good. I can't remember the last draft where it was like the top 9 picks or 8 picks just went according to the mocks. I mean, it's like people had a crystal ball or knew who players were getting picked, and it turned out that the exciting part of it, who going number 1 wasn't actually that exciting. It turned out that the Wizards had told Darren Peterson several days ago that
They weren't picking
they were
him.
taking Dibansa, and that's when the Jazz flew in and met with him and had dinner and got him comfortable with that idea. So it turned out that that wasn't ever a toss up. It was always going to be Dibansa. I thought all of the fits for the top 4 guys are good. I think they all make sense. I like the landing spots of them, and I think it's exciting that some of these teams that have been completely irrelevant are are now going to kind of be interesting. I mean, even down to the Kings. I think Acuff's going to be a really exciting, and he wanted to go there, and he's excited to go there seemingly, and he's going to be an exciting player on that team. So we're going to see teams like the Wizards, the Grizzlies, the Kings, and the Bulls as kind of being exciting teams next year, and that's good for the NBA. And I think it's part of the reason why they created these new draft rules is we want to see teams starting to compete, and I think these teams that have historically tanked are now ready to go in and start competing. So I thought it
Yeah.
was good. My least favorite pick was the Warriors. I hated the Lendeborg pick. I the track record for 24-year-olds is horrible. I mean, think about this. He came into the league, and by league I mean college basketball, the same year that Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, and Scotty Barnes entered college basketball. Think about that. And that's
Yeah,
when he
but
went into college basketball.
I don't know if I totally agree with the logic around that, around drafting an older player, because you're talking about timeline and how much value you can extract out of them over the course of their careers, or how developed of
No,
a
I'm not.
player.
I'm talking about actual on-court production. They have historically been busts. They don't pan out. And I
Like, pan
don't
out
think
in
he's
terms
going
of
to.
what? Because I think what they're looking for is just a contributor that can get minutes, and I don't know if they're looking to draft a star for, like, the post-Curry era.
I mean,
I
I
don't
think
think.
Guy Santos is better than him. I'd rather play Guy Santos than him.
Oh, well, we'll see, but I think that was the rationale behind the pick there, was that they need someone to play real minutes. That's not necessarily a development project. We'll see how much of a project he turns out to be. But, yeah, I also I liked, the Kings pick. I think that we may actually see them not be in such a desperate, you know, dash to get rid of Sabonis for this because of this pick. They need to hit the salary floor anyway. We might as well give our guard a veteran, all-star caliber, or at least has been in his career, big man to develop with. They'll move everybody else, but I think we could see him on the Kings for a little while until someone pries him away.
Mm.
Loved the Thunder pick, obviously. I just like that they sat back and the guy that they wanted all along just fell to them. The Bucks, I thought, did well with the 2 picks they got. Those are the types of guys I would want if I was in the position that they're in. You take the shot at a higher floor that has some star potential in Burries, and then you take the physical gifts of Ament. So,
Yeah, I think Ament's a complete flyer. He could be
yeah.
out of the league in two years. I
But
mean,
I
he.
think that's a fair way to approach having
Yeah,
2
no,
picks in the
I
draft.
agree. They took a
Yeah.
high floor guy and Burries, who I think is going to be a rotational NBA player for his career. He's going to produce. He makes sense, and Ament's a major swing, and we'll see if it hits.
The pick I liked the most was Caleb Wilson. And it's easy to just pick someone in the top 5, but I think particularly with this team, and with Giddy as a ball handler, that he's going to have a big year and he's going to have a lot of above the rim finishes and highlights. And I think he's going to be an exciting player this year and may even challenge for rookie of the year given the talent around him versus the other teams. I mean, maybe Boozer would be in a similar situation, but Darren Peterson's going to be great, but that Utah team is going to be good and has a lot of talent already. And the Wizards have some talent
He's
on
a
their roster
great
already as
fit.
well.
He's a perfect fit. Dibanza and Boozer would have just they had a clear hole at the 2 guard, and they got what could be a generational guy. So he was a perfect fit. I think Dibanza is a good fit as well. The fits were all perfect for those top 4 guys. So I liked all those. I really liked what the Spurs did as I'm just to go back to them. I thought their picks were awesome, specifically Quintance. I can never pronounce his name correctly. I thought that that was a really, really good pick. The the Mavericks one is interesting. We'll see if Merez pans out. I mean, he's a very switchable defender, but fascinating that they went with him instead of somebody like Mara, who's just physically larger and could be extremely gifted on the offensive end with his passing ability. So it was interesting to see them go with Merez. And the funniest one had to have been the Nets, right? I mean, never a good sign when your draft pick is missed time in college because of back issues. I mean, he's 19, so
Yeah,
what do you having back issues for? You're 19. That's scary. But they were certainly excited about it, were they not?
they were. All right. Well, let's see what kind of crazy happenings go on in the next few days. But thanks for covering these big moves with me, with the 2 major trades we've had thus far, and wrapping up the draft. It's been a good chat.
Yeah. See you,
All
bro.
right. See ya.